Welcome to our panelists and all of you who are listening out there. On January 31st, as we launch Songs of Unity and Hope, a sort of global SongFest featuring music, poetry, discussion, interviews, musicians from all continents, and above all, song, we will celebrate the 25th anniversary of SongFest. This is our gift to all of the students, alumni, faculty members, audience members, and song lovers who have been part of our family for so long. I'm Victoria Browers, a member of the faculty at SongFest and a proud alumna of this program. Today, I'm joined by alums Kristina Bachrach, Dimitri Dover, Gloria Engle, Devin Guthrie, Jeremy Hirsch, Daniel Hunter-Hawley, Laura Strickling, and Renate Rohlfing. I'm delighted to talk with each of them about their SongFest experiences and how they have impacted their life's work. I'd like to begin by asking each of you to briefly introduce yourselves and let us know what year or years you attended SongFest, what level of the program you took part in, and also where you're currently located. I think it's easiest to just do this alphabetically, so let's start with you, Kristina.
Hi, I'm Kristina Bachrach. I'm currently located outside Chicago. Pre-pandemic, I was splitting my time between New York City and Chicago. I've been here since March. I attended SongFest for the first time in 2010 and again in 2011. And that was during my master's degree. And then I came back, that was as a Stern Fellow also. I came back as a Stern Fellow in 2014. And then in 2016, the last time as the Ziering Conling Fellow as part of the Oral Foundation, Recovered Voices.
Great. And Dimitri?
Hi, everybody. My name is Dimitri Dover. I'm a pianist. Have been based in New York and the area for a while now. And I came to SongFest first in 2012 and 2013 as a fellow, and then returned in 2014 as a staff pianist of sorts, and then returned in 2016 and 2018 as a coach, as faculty. And right now I'm in northern Westchester County, about an hour north of New York City. I've been in or around New York City for about 15 years now.
Great. How about you, Gloria?
Hi, I'm Gloria. I'm a pianist. I attended SongFest 2014-2015 as a Stern Fellow. I attended Hidden Valley Winter Intensive in 2017 as a fellow, where I met Tori for the first time. You sang Unforgettable Air Lapse by Schubert. And I returned as a staff pianist in 2019. Currently, I'm located in Kingsville, Texas, where I work for Texas A&M University as a collaborative pianist.
Wonderful. Great. And Devin?
Hi there. Hi. So my name is Devin Guthrie. I can't remember if my first year was 1999 or 2000.
I was there with you in 2000 and you were like a teen.
I was 12, 13.
Oh my God.
But I can't remember if I came before that summer or not. But that was my first time, and I think I did it between 5 or 6 times between that year and 2007 until I finished my bachelor's degree. And I've had the pleasure of being back since, doing the Distinguished Alumni Recital and on a previous album for SongFest. And I had the reason why I was able to is because I'm from the area here in Southern California, Claremont and Seal Beach. I have, in the before times, I had been based in New York City for 16 years, but with the pandemic, I am back here at home in Southern California.
Yeah, great. Jeremy?
Hi, I'm Jeremy Hirsch. I was a singer at SongFest for, I think, 4 years. Let's see, so the first one was 2010, and then I also did 2011. Kristina was there, some other folks too. Laura, I think, was in 2011, right? And that was as a young artist. And then I came back a bit later in 2015 and 2016 as a fellow. And now I live in Frankfurt, Germany, and I'm actually not singing anymore, but I do write about opera and song and concerts for some magazines and online publications.
Great. And then Daniel.
Yes, well, I did SongFest in 2001 and 2003. I'm currently an associate professor at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, actually just down the road from Gloria.
Oh.
So, yeah, I did it right after my bachelor's and attempt at a master's in music theory that I dropped out of because I realized I didn't really want to do music theory anymore. And then I did it in the middle of my master's degree.
Great.
And I'm currently actually in Southern California. I'm also from Southern California. The first time I did SongFest, it was at Chapman, and that was like right down the road from my house. So
Awesome. Okay, Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Strickling. I'm a soprano, and I was at SongFest as a Stern Fellow 2011 and 2012. And I was there in 2000, I think 17 or 18 to do just a guest appearance in a concert, an amazing concert for Bill Bolcom and Harbison. Yeah, it was amazing. And I live in St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, so that's where I am now.
Great. And Renata.
Hi, I'm Renata. I'm a pianist, and I was very lucky to attend SongFest as a Stern Fellow in 2011. And though I didn't attend the whole program, in subsequent years, I was able to go often to some of the performances and pass through because I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii. So I love being able to go to Southern California on my way back home.
Yeah.
And right now I'm currently in Brooklyn, New York, where I live.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. And it's great to hear everyone is spread out all over the world, actually, which is pretty amazing. That we're able to be here together and do this. So I'd just like to have each of you talk about your time at SongFest and specifically how it might have impacted where you were in your educational journey, timing wise. Some professionals, some were young. Maybe Devin, like, talk about, you were there as a really young kid and like things that might have stood out to you. And also just talk a little bit about if you had any specific interests that you felt like weren't being met in a traditional conservatory environment or music school environment that you were exploring, or were there certain faculty members you wanted to work with? And also if you attended more than once, which several of us have, if there was an experience you found that you wanted more of or why you would choose to come back. And I'll just open the floor to anyone.
I don't know.
I can start if nobody wants to go.
Sure.
Tori, is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't tell if somebody else was talking or not. Well, as I mentioned, I did the program the first time. I had done 5 years for my undergrad because I was undeclared, and then I stayed at Santa Barbara for another year to do the master's in music theory, which I already mentioned I quit. And when I did the program the first time, it was really, I was so green. Like, I mean, I'm sure I knew who Martin Katz and Graham Johnson were, but beyond that, I had no experience outside of school. And, I think one of the things that I really took away from that first summer of doing it was really feeling validated as a musician and singer for the first time. I was not a huge operatic baritone at the time, not that I am now either, but the environment I was in at school, I always felt like I was kind of below the tier of what was expected from other singers. And so my, just being able to work with Graham Johnson and Martin Katz and be told like, no, what you're thinking of and your opinions have a lot of meaning and value. It was really like a fantastic experience. And then the second summer when I did it was during my master's degree. And I think I went back just because I realized there was so much to know. I mean, listening to Graham talk about Schubert, I loved the online SongFest this past summer where I got to hear him lecture again. It was just brought me back to those moments where it was just like astounding amount of knowledge. And I just appreciated that so much, and still do, just to think of like, there's always more to know. And in terms of like gaps, I guess I would just refer back to what I was mentioning a second ago, that I really didn't feel validated as a musician because my interest was primarily in song and not in opera. And I didn't really understand or realize at the time that there was a place for that. And so going to a program where not only was song so valued and really the primary focus at the time, but also just to hear such amazing singers. I remember, I think it was my first time, Ollie Watts Davis, who was a fantastic soprano and faculty member, singing Poulenc song and just like blowing me away. And so, yeah, I think those are my thoughts about, what I really got from the program at the time.
Great. Devin, you were gonna.
Yeah, well, I can actually piggyback on a lot of that. I think, Daniel, we may have overlapped for a couple of years. I think we were, yeah.
Yes, so, we did.
yeah, we were, yeah. The 01, 03, those early years, yeah. Well, I was so young, but I went to SongFest. I had started out as a dancer and a musical theater singer. And then the moment Schubert entered my life, I was like whiplashed into that direction. Total nerdy transparency. My username on a lot of things is Schubertology.
Yes.
Anyway, whatever. Okay. I know, whatever. I had just been introduced to Schubert and art song. And again, it was just it blew my mind. It was like going from black and white to Technicolor, and having the opportunity. At that time, there was a high school level. That's why I was able to be there. And also because I was local, it was less costly for my family. So, because I didn't have to fly somewhere and stay somewhere. And sitting and I was allowed to watch every single masterclass for the grown-ups, and sitting there and just absorbing Martin Katz and Graham and all of the living composers that we had the great privilege to work with. I couldn't get enough. And again, it was very validating that, I'll never forget one of the turning points in my life, not just my career, was in, I think, the 2000 summer. It had been the Copeland Centennial, and I had learned some of the Emily Dickinson poems. And Rosemary asked me if I wanted to sing There Came a Wind Like a Bugle for a Martin Katz masterclass in the grown-up program. And I went in there, prepared within an inch of my life. And it was a turning point. It was extraordinary. And being given the opportunity, again, to be taken seriously and say, okay, well, let's teach you. Here's that space for that kind of work. And I remember all of the classes being so multifaceted as well. It wasn't just the same thing over and over. And I used what I learned at SongFest still to this day, both as a performer and with my own voice students, especially, John Hall also, come on. Every time I walk into an audition, I still use his trick, the happy secret, right? Do you remember the happy secret?
Yeah.
I don't know, it was just so multidimensional. I kept coming back because there was always, again, I think we're all going to be saying a lot of the same things. There's just always more to learn. The faculty from those early years was at such a high level, and such mindfulness was taken to the diversity of the repertoire. It wasn't the same stuff every summer, with every singer and every pianist and every person who came, there was this beautiful spectrum of work that was happening, and constantly so much to learn. I felt like there was also an environment created of safety for that exploration. This is not a thing where, oh, there's a masterclass every day, you have to be performative, like at the performance level. And no, this is a time you know, these few weeks, here's the bubble where we can all percolate and explore and try, especially when it's in the summer, you know, between seasons and things. It was, I mean, and that aspect can be said for a lot of summer programs, but I just thought, especially for song repertoire, I thought it was, I don't know, it was great. I felt so lucky to be able to just learn from all of that and still then go on to work with all those people throughout my career. That hasn't stopped, luckily enough. So anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know, I would go back too, again, still, you know, there's always more to learn.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any pianists want to talk
No,
about?
sure.
Yeah.
I can say a few things. It's fascinating to hear Devin talk about going as a teenager, because I'm sort of in the exact opposite camp, I guess. I went to SongFest basically at Margot Garrett's whatever recommendation, and studying with Margot Garrett in the first place was kind of a return to being in a conservatory, doing a DMA after a very long hiatus of freelancing and doing all sorts of things, not necessarily working with singers. And it was also marked the first time I was in any kind of a collaborative piano program. In reality, that's what I have been doing since, you know, roughly 1994. But there is, well, the whole collaborative piano nomenclature is probably beyond the scope of this chat, but there are virtues to being in such a program and calling yourself that. And so the very first summer I was in the DMA at Juilliard, I went to SongFest, and I think one of the really the best things about it is it reminded me a little bit of the kind of idealism in music making and music study of a liberal arts college. It was sort of a liberal arts college for song.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you didn't have to think about much else. And because of the non-mandatory nature of going to classes, going to concerts, you could really pick and choose what would inspire you, and, you know, what would nourish you. And well, conservatories are necessary, but one doesn't always get the same feeling from being in a conservatory. But I do remember that from undergrad, which was not at a conservatory and was not in a music major. Just, you know, being able to make music where certain kinds of agendas were off the table, you know. So besides that general kind of feeling of enthusiasm, I think that I don't think there's any festival like it. I mean, just literally, I don't think there's anything like it that focuses on song, that focuses on American song. Again, maybe outside the scope, but I think the profession of song singing and song study, you know, does face certain challenges, certainly in America, and I think that language is one of them. And so the focus on songs in English, not to the detriment of standard repertoire, but that focus is incredibly important and you know, probably unique. And then I lost my train of thought, sorry. But anyway, I think that the sheer caliber and volume of wisdom that is pervaded SongFest is unlike any festival. And I think it's also wonderful that so much is packed into a short time. because that's another thing about some festivals, you know, that drag on for 9 weeks, and then there's always a sort of contour to what part, where you get the most out of it, and you know which moments are more inspiring. But at SongFest you sort of arrive, and then it's sort of full voltage until you're done. And I think that's also just a great way to come to grips with the repertoire and to work with people. You know, there's nothing like the moment to really learn and you know, excel. So that's I think that's my piece for now.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll add on to that, Dimitri. Like, I think before I had gone to SongFest, I had only been introduced to the song repertoire that year as a collaborative piano masters at Juilliard too. So I was a classmate of Dimitri's as well. And I think how it completely changed how I thought about collaboration in general, just because, you know, you're able to collaborate with so many different people, and that's part of the format. And just like being able to take those skills and have the flexibility and also the openness to be able to work with so many different people, so many different mentors, I think is a skill that that really serves everybody that goes to SongFest. And it's something that I've taken and been so grateful for my whole career since then.
Wonderful. Gloria. Oh yeah, there's
Gloria.
Can I? Yeah, I'll be really short, Laura. So the first 2 years I attended SongFest, I was a freelancer. I was done with my master's degree, and of course there comes a phase where, you know, you stop with the weekly lessons. So I was teacherless, and being a solo pianist and kind of new to the completely collaborative piano world, I was in search for a mentor and a mentorship. So SongFest was attractive because it had so many teachers, as Dimitri just mentioned, and Renata did. Graham Johnson, Martin Katz, Margot Garrett, of course, Alan Smith, who are charged with passion. And sorry, it was just such an intense 1 month, but it carried me for the whole year. Yeah, and besides meeting colleagues and so-called SongFest upperclassmen like Dimitri, Javier, and Lisa was really important for me because they were so inspiring. Eventually, one of Lisa's passion baby, Holocaust Memorial Project, I was really inspired by that. And while I was pursuing my DMA studies 2016 and 2019, I presented a little concert thanks to Lisa. Yeah, so SongFest has been really so important in my life. Yeah, so the first 2 years I was freelancing, and when I came back in 2017, I was pursuing my DMA degree. So I was able to explore more deeper and refined art of accompanying with Graham. And in 2019, when I returned as a staff, I was seeking for jobs. So I think SongFest helped me prepare for my job search in 2019.
Wonderful.
So I was kind of the opposite of Devin. I quit singing after grad school for 3 years and came back to singing kind of just thinking of it as something I really enjoyed doing, and wouldn't it be nice to have that back in my life at 28, 29. And so Rosemary Ritter heard me at a competition and said, you should come to SongFest. And I'd never even heard of SongFest. And again, I wasn't pursuing a singing career seriously at the time. I just was trying to bring some joy to my life. And it just completely changed the trajectory of my life. Not only did it give me this deep yearning to know more about song, but it made every relationship that has been important to not only, you know, me as a human being, but to me as a singer, and people who've helped me be a singer, continue to be a singer. came and started at SongFest. Like I truly don't think that I would be a singer today if it wasn't for Rosemary. So, you know, there are many ways in which I kind of feel like I owe my entire current life to Rosemary Ritter. And that chance meeting at this random competition. And so, you know, there's the actual, you know, everybody's discussed how, you know, how much knowledge we're getting, but and all of that is just this like fire hose of knowledge. And actually, the first time I went to SongFest, I was kind of like skipping around on air. Like, again, I'm like 29 years old and I'm like basically a freshman in college again, and mentally, you know, and I was just like, this is Disneyland for singers. And I just couldn't get enough of it. But my husband's a lawyer, and he always says you don't go to law school to learn about the law. You go to law school to learn how to think like a lawyer. And I think that in the long term, that's really what SongFest did for me is, you know, I learned a lot of minute details and a lot of specific information, but it really taught me how to think like an artist and think like a singer. And that kind of core confidence that has carried through is, again, one of the core, you know, things that I've taken forward from in my life and who I am right now.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Jeremy or Kristina?
Yeah, sure. I can go. Sorry, Kristina, beat you to it. Haha. So yeah, let's see. Well, yeah, I would say that I found SongFest at a moment of crisis in my life. I had done a semester at conservatory and I started singing late. I'd been a bass player and was playing jazz and rock and stuff like that, and started singing. I was like, okay, this is cool. And decided to just go full board and leap right into the deep end. And then did a semester at Peabody and was like, I don't understand this at all. I had seen an opera, I saw Carmen, I was like, the people are so far away, and what are they saying, and all this, you know. And then somehow, I don't even, maybe I saw a poster or something, but somehow I ended up at SongFest. I live near Pepperdine, so the two of us met, and yeah, I remember going to, I didn't really know, I had heard the name Schubert. I didn't know any Schubert songs. I didn't really know who he was, what he was about. Same with Fauré, same with basically every composer. And so I was very green, you could say, in the classical world. And I remember, for me, it was a Graham Johnson masterclass on the side by the cafeteria, random class. And I think it was a Fauré class where they did some of the late opus. Maybe it was Jean-Bernard Saran, or I think he was singing something from Horizon Chimérique or something. And man, that combined with the poetry, because it was also kind of an English poetry nut, and then hearing Graham tell the stories about these people's lives and realizing, okay, these are real people who lived in a real time and knew each other and had just incredible artistic experiences, and that you can have this same kind of journey into their world through these songs. And for me, that changed my entire life. It wasn't, there was no going back after that. I completely fell in love with Fauré and then with song in general. And yeah, I don't know, there's really few things I enjoy more. So yeah, I just think recital's a great format, and I love that SongFest exists, because boy, it's like Dimitri was saying, it's not, you know, I really respect everyone who sings a lot of song and who does a lot of recital, because I don't think it's an easy profession. And I mean, obviously not, right? No artistic one is, but song, you really have to love it. And yeah, man, the people that come to SongFest definitely love it. And if they don't love it when they get there because they haven't experienced much song before, they kind of end up loving it, I think, for the most part. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then I went back the next year, and that was at the beginning of undergrad, and then came back after I had actually studied a bit and started a master's and finished a master's and had projects that I wanted to do and all this repertoire to explore. And man, I just don't know what my life would look like without SongFest, to be honest. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. There's so many other things that came from it. So
wonderful. Thank you. Kristina.
Last and least.
Not.
um, sorry. when I when I first was coming to SongFest, the first 2 years I was there, I was doing my master's program, and I was lucky that it was just kind of a luxurious extension of my school experience, because the teachers with whom I was working most closely at school, notably Amy Burton, Christina Stonescu, and Joshua Green, were all people who had centered song repertoire as part of their life. So I know a lot of people come in really having focused on opera, and then the song stuff can be such an incredible revelation. For me, one of the main revelations at that time was getting to work so closely with composers, because in my conservatory experience, you know, if you're lucky, maybe your program will do an opera by a living composer who will come in and work in depth, but more often it's maybe a 2-hour masterclass for the entire voice program. And the experience of having them come in and talk extemporaneously about their music and work with people in depth in front of you and the private coachings, that I think is something that's rarely replicated, along with just the confluence of starry international faculty. And there are a lot of programs that center song, but none quite as large and profound as this one. And then when I came back out of school, it was, I guess in those years, I was singing a lot more opera out of school, because it was the most obvious thing for a lot of reasons. And the opportunity to take those 4 weeks in the summer and come back to the song repertoire with kind of like a monk-like devotion, really thinking of nothing else, eating it and breathing it. There's nothing I ever want more in the world. And the other thing to mention, and a lot of you have kind of touched on this, was just being in community, not only with the faculty, but also with other like-minded musicians, singers, and pianists. And I've met many of the most important people in my life through SongFest. So I'm endlessly grateful.
Yeah, great. Well, I think you all have kind of covered like the little questions I was thinking of asking, because we all had this shared experience. And again, I would say the same thing. Like, it really just encouraged me to kind of contemplate within myself, like how to truly become a complete artist. Because in school, it's kind of like you have these guideposts to meet, and you're constantly like, got to get this song, this repertoire, and here we're just exposed to such a large amount of repertoire. And what, like, I think it was Dimitri who mentioned, like, you kind of can like pick and choose what it is that really interests you, and then move forward and kind of continue to feel empowered by these amazing faculty members or composers, and continue these relationships moving forward in your professional life. And I think all of us are kind of at a certain level professionally. And so I'm just kind of hoping to talk a little bit more about where we go from after this experience of SongFest and other festivals we may have attended. But just as sort of, I mean, obviously in our current time, especially this past week, that it seems like hope for humanity is sometimes kind of hard to come by. And I think describing music's value to this world can be difficult. And I have a quote by Alex Ross, the writer and critic, which I think is kind of interesting. He says, "Every art form fights the noose of verbal description." And so I think it's kind of still safe to say that wherever we might find it in this world, in any form that it takes, that music will meet a universal human need. And I've been thinking and looking at music as a metaphor for what we want to see in the world, and how our imagination can transfer over to other parts of our lives, and how we as musicians, singers, pianists can tell our collective stories. And the art song recital is such an intimate platform, and it allows for us to explore this. So beyond honing these skills crucial for our art forms, such as text, languages, style, technique, of course, I would ask any of you from the singer or the pianist standpoint or the duo standpoint, like how would you encourage young singers and pianists to be more adventurous in their approach to performance and kind of continuing this legacy of song maybe in new ways?
The one thing that we have that instrumentalists don't have is words. So I think we always have to start from the words. And if we have a chance to program something, we are saying to our audiences and to the people who are presenting the programs, this is something that matters to me. And that message can come across in one song, or it can come across in an entire program. So I think that, that's a weighty thing to say to an audience. This is me and this is what I think, or this is something that I want you to think about and leave with and go mull a while after the concert. So, I mean, for me, it always starts with the words, and hopefully that starts the conversation for after the concert.
Yeah. And any of you who might be educators, I was just thinking, like, for me, I think encouraging students to kind of experiment with what have your experiences been in the professional world, experiencing with incorporating maybe movement or media or sort of unconventional repertoire or venue. What have your experiences been, good or bad? I'd love to hear that kind of out in the professional world.
I'd love to talk a little bit about that. I come from a dance background, and I know a lot of, in my experience, a lot of my colleagues on the opera stage, whenever the word dance or maybe high wire work or things like that comes up, everybody goes, ah! Right? And I don't know, the way I was, my experiences growing up and the way, I don't know, for me, I'm so in love with interdisciplinary art. I love when we don't isolate ourselves in our own artistic bubble. I think it's interesting. I think it just broadens I mean, it all comes down to communication. And I think it just broadens the spectrum of communication. And I love, again, going back to the SongFest experience of how many times, at least back in my experience, were we invited to, take off the heels we were wearing and walk around and like explore the space of standing in the crook of the piano in the very, Liederabend tradition, which is also fair and good. I think right now we're also going through a period where a lot of rules are being broken in really interesting ways. And I think people, I encourage my students too, and I try and encourage myself to stay really true to your singular aesthetic and not worry so much about how it fits in canonically, and culturally in terms of tradition. I think it's important to understand and learn tradition so that you can make interesting new choices going away from it, but not just sticking in a zeitgeist. And I think it's really great seeing all these new performance groups and new performance styles that are incorporating, especially media, now that it's becoming way more sophisticated and less costly. It's happening even more, and I think it's really exciting. I think it's pioneering, and I think it's great. And I don't know, when I was so young, I was focusing so hard on learning the style, learning performance practice, and that's important and that's great. But I think now it's, at least for me, as I've gotten older, it's more, I feel less afraid to make these new artistic stylistic choices while honoring the traditions of the repertoire. I don't know if that makes much sense. But I think that there's room for it now as well. I think there's more of an audience for it now. I don't know. It's exciting. I think everyone should like do crazy, wonderful, wild ideas that they believe in. I don't know.
I think what's so, like, one of the main reasons probably we all really are affected by song and think it's so important is because it enables us to express such basic human universal emotions. And I think that's really the main thing that we want to communicate and how we can interact with people. And I would say that learning about song has led me to a new career, which is in music therapy. So I'm actually getting my master's in music therapy at NYU right now. And I credit a lot of that to the song repertoire, just because I think that it enables people to be more empathetic. I think it really, and I don't mean this in a cheesy way at all, like it truly connects people because it makes us all feel like we are all going through the same thing. And I think, especially this week, I felt that a lot. And I think as far as multimedia goes, it's also a way for us to be able to introduce our own interpretations of the pieces themselves that go beyond just sound, and we can also introduce these visual elements, these elements of movement that can make it our own and make it really unique and make it our interpretation of that experience and move it forward into the 21st century.
I was just going to say a few words, piggybacking on what Devin said, because I think some of the challenges of facing the profession of a song singer, particularly in America, are also the same things that can liberate the format and provide the impetus for more kind of more creative way of presenting things. I mean, we don't. I think the main challenge, I alluded to it before, is the language and the kind of intimacy with the poetry, with the language, with the repertoire that is prevalent in Europe, and it's not here. And then the other, I think, main category of challenge is just that the profession is just not the same. I mean, there probably never was and never will be an American Ellie Ameling or something. That kind of, to look forward to that sort of a traditional recital career, it's not especially meaningful, I don't think, in America. But at the same time, it's incumbent on the singer and the pianist, anybody who is kind of curating anything, developing a concert series, choosing their repertoire, choosing whom to work with. The fact that there is not this tradition in the repertoire, in the concert life, I think means that anything is possible and can be done convincingly, and there won't be really any of the same kinds of baggage that there is in Germany or England or wherever else. I think that's a great thing, and I think audiences, by the same token, audiences, they will know if something is done convincingly and with commitment, and if something is done with quality but not shutting them out. I mean, I think there are many ways to go about this. I've done concerts with cert titles, that they have their advantages and disadvantages, but I think that's a great step. But going back to my point about not having the same kind of traditional career to look forward to, I think a challenge that I see is that because song singing alone is not going to pay the bills, to crudely speaking, in America. There's a little bit of a dilemma, because if you're going to do that, you have to have, support to be doing it, and whether that comes through your personal circumstances or outside support, because frankly, putting together recital after recital, year after year, is an incredible amount of work. I mean, I don't have to tell any of the singers that. And so you get a little bit, I mean, I say it with admiration, but also it's dangerous. You get into this labor of love territory.
Yeah.
And
or like your passion project, people will say,
Right. It needs that at the highest level, or like anybody has to have that. But then if it's only that, it's tricky. You can make it work. I'm looking at people who've made it work beautifully, but I think that's something that any singer who is starting has to kind of come to grips with. And where is song going to fall on the menu? I mean, it's in this country, it's always been combined with opera. Traditionally, I don't think that has to be the case, but if it's not going to be the case, there has to be a clear sense of what you're capable of and what your passions and desires are. And then I think you can bring it to the audience. Maybe Laura can chime in here, or Kristina. I know them both very well, so I know they will have something to say on what I've been talking about here.
Go ahead, Kristina.
No, after you.
I've always kind of joked about doing opera to support my song career. I mean, the truth of the matter is that generally opera contracts, while being longer, are going to be more profitable. But I have also found there have been years where I've done primarily song and been able to piece it together and make it work. But Dimitri, I think to kind of veer away from that specifically, I wanted to say I agree so much with you about this kind of barrier of entry for American audiences when it comes to art song. And it's not that they know that they don't like it, it's that they have no experience of it. There's no kind of cultural memory of this thing. It's not like, oh, my parents like that, so I don't like it. It's like, what is that? And I think that the most important thing is making this thing accessible. And there are a number of ways to do that. There's this multimedia thing. There's a lot of really cool online stuff that's happening right now. But I also think once people are in the room, making the music itself, putting it into context. You spoke about one of the amazing things about SongFest is focusing on music in the American vernacular and in English. And I think it doesn't mean we only have to sing music in English, but when there is music in other languages, which happens a lot of the time, making the translations not just available, but speaking to them or speaking to the historical context of a piece, what it meant for a composer, what it meant for the poet, and what it can mean for us today, how it speaks to our time. So I agree with you all when it comes to that.
And just to go back to what Laura was saying about language, I think I just got this idea, which is not revolutionary in any way, but what you were saying about that they just don't know it. It hasn't been like their parents liked it, so they stopped liking it, something like that. But just, I guess this is also a little bit more of what you were talking about too, Dimitri, of just a little bit extra work. It is a lot of work, but collaborating together and finding, whatever audience you might be singing for, what might the tunes be that they would know, right? So mixing in a Danny Boy arrangement or something with a Korean song or a French song or something like that that has a similar undertones, and then kind of talking about the text and like talking in these recitals to get more. I mean, was that what you were kind of mentioning with the words, Laura?
I mean, sort of. I think it's going to be different for every person, but I think that you know, if we're singing for the beauty of our own voice, if we're singing to stroke our own ego, the audience will know it. And so, if you are standing in front of people without something to say, then you're going to have an audience that walks away saying, "Wow, she had a really nice gown," or you can have an audience that walks away and says, "Did she really?" Okay, well, this is just a personal story, and it's totally an outlier. But my husband worked in Afghanistan for several years, and I did a concert there, and I chose to sing John Musto's "The Hangman at Home," which talks about, you know, a family man who happens to hang people for a living, for an audience in which I knew there would be warlords, because I had this opportunity, this one time in my life, to sing for people whom those words might mean something to. And, you know, we have that choice in every situation and everything that we do. Maybe we know who our audience is going to be, but maybe we don't. So, you know, putting real thought into why we're singing what we're singing, not just because it's beautiful, because most of it is, but, you know, thinking about it from every angle. And I think that's really what appeals to audiences in the end. And like Kristina said, giving them context, making sure there's program notes or spoken notes, because ultimately I appreciate things more when I know the backstory. You know, I'll be watching a movie, I immediately go to IMDb to see who the actors are and what other things they've been in, you know, give people that experience.
Right. Wow. That's great. So does anyone else have any further ideas?
Yeah, I mean,
Daniel,
I'll interject Tori really fast. You know, when Devin was talking about movement, I had a flashback, thinking for my first time at SongFest, being asked by Martin Katz to do a very Spanish dance during one of the interludes of Chiquitita la Novia. I mean, that was like so foreign to anything I was comfortable doing. And that kind of unconventional recital, I think the whole recital was staged in some way. And, you know, that was kind of a funny moment. And I'm glad it was before cell phone cameras that we didn't all enjoy that on Facebook. You know, in terms of some of the other questions that, you know, everybody's speaking really thoughtfully about, you know, one of the things that I deal with, because I teach primarily students that are coming from a very strong choral tradition in Texas, and they maybe not have had a lot of experience singing solo songs or certainly in opera. And when I hear people talking about these ideas of multimedia or unconventional spaces or unconventional programs, you know, I think it also just needs to be clear that most of the time that's really referring to a level of singer that's already experienced some amount of song repertoire, and that if, you know, students haven't had kind of the curricular requirement to sing in French, a lot of them won't. You know, it's a need to push people to really explore all of the repertoire, and then that's the challenge, to find what interests them within this broad spectrum of requirements that we're all forced to do as undergraduates. For my own singing at this point, I think the last 3 recitals I've done, 3 or 4 recitals I've done, I've used large scale projections, you know, using the cyc at the back of the hall, so 20 by 40 foot, and tried to make that as an immersive experience as possible. 2 of those were Schubert song cycles, and I just thought, you know, the Brownsville audience sitting through, you know, an hour of Die schöne Müllerin without being able to understand what's going on. And so I've loved doing that. I've loved creating the projections themselves, but I also think it has really kind of met people halfway that are really used to video and that, you know, much more attention than just me standing in the crook of the piano. And I also did that for a program with Jake Heggie's A Question of Light, using the artwork from that. And, you know, I would love for students to do that, but there's also like limited resources available for everybody to be using the hall in that way. But I think it's a great way to show students what can be done, so that as they finish their undergraduate degrees and then move on to graduate degrees, or start having to explore their own performance opportunities, which are really then self-driven outside of school, they have a broader understanding of what can be done. And, you know, especially after this past year with all of the online content that's been produced, it's really exciting to see the possibilities.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just interested, Jeremy, since you are no longer actively singing or pursuing a singing career, just as a writer, like kind of what, and somebody who attends a lot of performances and you're a critic as well, kind of what you see moving forward. Even, you know, now that we're in this pandemic and things have really shifted, but do you see any shifts moving ahead in our new world after hopefully this is finished?
I mean, I guess my point of view that I've come to with recital and what makes concerts great is I do ultimately want to see a really good show, and I want to feel the arc of an evening. I want to feel trajectory. I don't want it to be jerky, and, you know, I don't know. There's kind of these basic elements that you would get from a movie, you would get from a play, you would get from any piece of art that's structured well. And I think the difference between a well-structured recital that has, like you guys were talking about, vision, and I mean, and everything that everyone said was really just amazing. So thank you guys. It's fascinating. But man, like, yeah, I don't know. I think I used to be a little more pretentious about that sort of thing, but at this point, it's like there are so many ways to do it. And I think, for example, everyone in this chat here has loads of vision and loads of artistic talent and comes up with amazing things. And that combined with some production value, and that's great. As far as the commercial, I mean, right, then there's the commercial element, and I don't really know what to say about that, to be honest. I think we're all kind of talking around it a little bit, or people don't really say, like, you know,
Support us.
really say that aspect by name. Yeah, right. So I guess maybe it's a matter of support. I can't really speak to that, but basically everyone in this chat could speak to that a lot better than I could. But man, that's another element, right? It's like, how do you mount a production and get support and make something that's as good as an opera staged by an A-class house? Yeah. You know.
Yes, Gloria.
I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Well, in terms of looking for the support body and expanding, broadening, and looking for more audience, I think for those of us working at a university setting, we're very fortunate because we have this other department, science, math, literature, whatnot. And I think we'll have to look for what is binding us together, the binding force. And this is just an idea that has been in my mind for a long time now. Now I got this job. For example, if we reach out to a French department, French literature department, who love French language and they understand the value and the beauty and the reason to maintain the study of French literature, or, you know, the language, I think we can reach out to them and suggest a collaboration, maybe a collaborative presentation. And I think we can take this idea further, maybe to art historian. If Debussy was inspired by artworks or, you know, literatures, I mean, he was inspired by other guys rather than musicians, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we can think about the ways from where we are, one at a time. And of course, it's going to take time. But yeah, I think for those of us in the university setting, it's something that we can encourage our students to explore, and for us, for ourselves too.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. I think we've covered a lot today, and it was so fun to hear from everybody and kind of have a little reunion. And so just in closing, I just want to say I think that all of us and countless alumni throughout the past 25 years will note varying transformations formed by our SongFest experiences, but listeners too are transformed by great music, especially when it flows from the hearts and minds of the world's most curious, creative, and motivated young artists. And some years ago, cellist Yo-Yo Ma made this timely remark. Now, more than ever, culture matters. We know that music cannot stop a bullet or feed the hungry, but it can bring empathy and joy to places where they are in short supply. In other words, great music may not save the world, but it might make the world worth saving. And the young singers and pianists who attend SongFest each summer have made it their life's mission to create great music and strive to tell stories with the highest personal artistry. They've been doing it every year for 25 years now. And with that, we all give a big thank you to Rosemary Ritter and all of the faculty and staff at our beloved SongFest. And may it continue to grow and help to shape the lives of countless young musicians. And now I invite you all to unmute and wish a happy 25th anniversary to SongFest.
Happy 25th.
Happy 25th anniversary, SongFest.
Thank you so much.